at that time? Okay, good morning, everybody. It's 10 a.m. Let's call the meeting to order for Polk County Commissioners Court for May 11th, 2021. And at this time, Michael Cates from Central Baptist Church will lead us in prayer.
Thank you, Judge. Let's pray together. Father, we thank you just immediately this morning that you have seen fit to protect us through the storm this morning. Father, we thank you for your provision. We thank you that you know exactly what we need according to your perfect time, and you protect us. And Father, this morning we specifically pray for those who were impacted by these storms and continue to be, and we pray that you would provide according to your plan, and that you would use us according to your plan to provide for those. Father, this morning we thank you that you are our definition of justice, and you call us to join you, to love what is good and to hate what is evil. So Father, we pray for your discernment now. We pray for your clarity. And God, in that clarity we confess where we have rebelled against you. We have attempted to be our own gods, and yet you are faithful, you are good, you call us to repent and to believe. And so Father, help us to do that, and help us to, in your wisdom, make decisions that will glorify you. Father, I thank you for this court. I thank you for all that are participating, and I pray that you would help us to glorify you, help us to shed your light in this county. Father, may your name be lifted higher than any other in Polk County. May your truth be made known, and may those who you call believe in your truth. Bless each and every single one who are participating today, and bless this community for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Oh, I forgot about the pledge. Okay, Madam Clerk.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, public comments. Did anyone sign up?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Alan Cook and Mr. Bob Burkhalter Jr.
Okay. Alan,
Ma'am.
you want to come up and comment, or you want to wait till the discussion?
Yeah, let's just wait on that,
Okay,
Same with me here.
very well. That'll work. Okay, number 3, informational reports. We had to pull RFP 2021-17, delinquent court fees and fines collection services. It was withdrawn for revision and will be reposted at a later date. It was brought to our attention that the RFP was posted and that it was too specific and eliminated everybody else out of the bidding process, which is, according to statute, not legal. So we went ahead and pulled it, and then that will allow us also to get further input for the clerks. Okay, anybody else have an informational report? Very well. Now to the workshop. This is what a lot of you are here for, I guess. Okay, number 4, let me just kind of go through some of the information, just so we have it on the record, and then certainly we will ask Jed to come forward and provide assistance. Okay, since we discussed and adopted the current subdivision regulations on August 25th of 2020, we've had multiple items that have come to our attention from either surveyors or developers, title company, attorneys, just different people that have stepped forward and said, this is all great, but this is a problem. So we have gotten some insights from GLS, the commissioners, permits, the rural addressing offices, local surveyors, and incorporated all of those. Along with that, we also since received information and suggestions from Gary Ashmore of the Lower Trinity Groundwater Conservation District, which we can discuss also during this workshop. And the copy of Gary's letter is included in there for your review. Also, a copy of the letter that we received from Gary gives you TCEQ's definition of a public water system for you all to review also, because it seems like a lot of this subdivision is also getting pulled in with RV parks, small RV parks, small subdivisions. You see what I'm saying? It's kind of, we keep pulling threads and something else comes out. So we made some, there were some examples that we pulled out, and one of the recommendations that came forward also was that we consider minor subdivision regulations, which the city of Livingston uses for small developments of 4 lots or less with no new roads or public areas that are not in a floodplain. We updated the plat requirements already. We changed them from Mylar to translucent bond medium paper, which is both longer lasting and less expensive. We removed the requirements to submit a DWG copy on CD or flash drive. Marking items which must be shown on a signed plat with an asterisk or double asterisk for items required on the plat if applicable. We've had some plats that came back and that was the only thing that was missing. The only thing that was missing, it said, but must be on plat, must be on plat, must be on plat, and that was the only things that were missing. Removing requirement to include contour lines on the plant and submit a PDF of the topo map on CD or flash drive instead. Modify the requirements for showing location of all wells on the plat. Modify Appendix H for on-site septic facilities, and added Appendix I for road subdivision naming, which was recommended by rural addressing and permits. And then we also went through and updated some of our plat requirements to require evidence that the proposed access drives meet TxDOT standards. We had that occur to us where there was a development and then they didn't go talk to TxDOT, and TxDOT said no to some of the driveways. And then we updated number 8 to waive the filing fee requirements for some of the subdivisions and some of the platting. Okay, and then we have some additional items for discussion, but why don't we let Jed get us started, and that's fundamentally where we started and where we are now.
Thank you, Judge, Commissioners Court. I think my primary purpose for being here today is a lot of the stuff was pretty straightforward, but we had some conflict within the subdivision ordinance regarding the street standards, the road standards. And what I did was took the 3 different locations within our existing subdivision ordinance and tried to do my best to bring together y'all's intention for a road standard and presented that recommendation. These are y'all's standards. We'd be glad to weigh in on them, but what I trust that y'all have this in your packet was as an exhibit of a typical road section. And I also had provided markups of what I would recommend that we do. The lion's share of the roads that will be constructed within the county are going to be what would be considered a local street, just for local traffic. And that's what we're gearing these standards for. We also have a table in the back in the Appendix R, I think it is. It's changed to Appendix S as I last checked. And it addresses roads with a higher level of service. Let me let y'all.
Okay, this more applies to you all. Are there any questions that you want to ask them about the road widths and depths?
Well, and the one y'all sent us was on 42 and 43, but it ain't in this book.
72 and 73. See if it's in there. It's right there.
Doesn't mean anything to me.
Mine says 70. I'm on this.
You probably
No.
want to look at the one that Jed provided, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
This what?
that was
The one that's
42 and
the
43 and the one we got now.
packet is different from what's in the bound subdivision regulations.
Okay, so you want them to look
So
at the
one
bound
that's-
subdivision
No, look at the one that's in the court packet.
in the packet?
Yeah, right here.
Gotcha.
That's the one on page 73?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
72. The graph you got for the different deals on 73. Is it the same as what you have there, or is it different? Yeah, here. It's 20-foot pavement, 26 base.
28 base.
No, so that's the old one. Subdivision ordinance?
And look at, what do you have in your packet?
The one he sent us had the 28-foot base, 20-foot pavement.
That's what we got it.
The one Jed
Is it
sent us.
in the court packet or the subdivision regs?
And what I
Court
got in the
packet,
email.
okay.
In the court packet. The subdivision regs are old, right? That's what we're
Yeah,
reviewing.
yeah.
28.
It looks like it's about 8 to 10 pages in your.
Yeah, it's on page 12.
Yeah, I got it here. I got
Oh,
it.
so we don't need to look at this thing.
No, sir, that's
That's
what we're
the old
reviewing.
one,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you need to eliminate.
Okay.
Wasn't aware of all this from,
If I may point out a few things on that I'd like to see y'all weigh in on if you have any concerns about it. We had some discrepancy in that the road width required, at one place showed it 22 foot and one showed it 20 foot. And what I showed on here is a 20 foot. I like this from the standards that you had, that you required a shoulder on that included a base. It was a 4-foot shoulder on each side. That could be a concern when it comes to width. I mean, if we've got a ditch greater than 2 foot deep, and to attain these ditch slopes and that shoulder, we're going to take up with this road section all 60 foot right of way width.
well, you know, this is all fine on a flat elevation. But Polk County's, I don't know, on my side, I'm hills and hollows. It's just, you know, and like you say, this is a perfect example of what it ought to be, but if you've got a ditch, that's like you're saying.
Yeah, you get a deep ditch, you got a
deep
concern.
ditch, what are we gonna do?
The other thought
Give
that,
them a variance.
Yeah, we got on the roads. But you're still working within a 60-foot right of way.
Yeah.
if you've got a 2 foot ditch with a 4 foot or 4 to 1 front slope of the ditch, 4 to 1 back slope of the ditch, with this road section, you're going to use all 60 feet of that right of way. And the way we could address that, I mean, with a wider shoulder, which is great. I mean, you're traveling on the 20 feet, but you've got, if you're meeting a car or something, you've got another 4 feet solid to get onto. Sometimes some of your standards showed a 3 to 1 ditch slope, and what this standard is, the more conservative of what y'all showed in your standards of 4 to 1. TxDOT typically is 6 to 1. But of course, they're dealing with a lot greater speeds than we're dealing with here.
Jed, the only problem that I have with that, talking about, and I realize the shoulder is good, but if we're not required to cover all of that shoulder with asphalt,
Yes, sir.
or high mac or something like that, when it rains, that shoulder is going to soak that water up underneath that asphalt, especially if we're using chip seal, which we use in a lot of different places, and that edge is going to start breaking off. We use a 20-foot, 60-foot easement.
Okay.
We're 10 feet from the edge of the road to the middle of our ditch. So we got a 10-foot slope this side, 10-foot slope this side, 20-foot road, same on the other side. That takes our 60 feet. And then I try to encapsulate whatever we're using, whether it's Portland cement or it's road base or whatever. We try to encapsulate that with the prime and the chip seal to
Right.
keep that from soaking back up underneath there.
Okay.
Because we've done
And-
some of what you're doing here, and it just won't hold together.
And
over
that,
time.
you mentioned about the slope, getting the water off of the road
Yeah.
for the longevity of the road. One of the other changes I made, or that I'm recommending to it, is where you've got a flex base as a driving surface, that we have a minimum cross slope of 5%, rather than your typical 2 to 3%. That'll help get the road off, or get the water off the road. But you make a good point.
Unfortunately, we have to use chip and seal sometimes.
Right,
Because, you know,
right.
that it wasn't necessarily designed sometimes for how we use it, but nevertheless, it helps keep people out of the mud, so
Yes,
to
sir.
speak. So-
And done right, chip and seal will hold up. I've
And
seen
so
it
we
hold
just
up
run
for a
into
long
a
time.
situation where if it rains like it has for the last 2 or 3 weeks, inevitably, it's going to soak up underneath there in the school bus
Right.
and the trash truck, because they're never going to stay in the middle of the road. They're going to get over there on the edge, and it just starts breaking off.
Yes, sir. The solution to that, we could make that shoulder, give a greater slope requirement for that. Maybe a 10% cross slope of the shoulder. What I want to try to avoid with a 10-foot wide roadway is to go straight from the edge of the road to the ditch, because you got no room. Invariably, one person gets over and another one doesn't. And you just got no room for error there.
But like I say, you got
without a
foot on
shoulder.
each side, it's gonna get beat all to pieces, just like you say, and
Right.
they're gonna drive on the edge, and unless it's covered. So we're better off kinda letting it grass back up to the edge of our
Well, we try,
pavement.
when we go back in there, then we'll try to pull that edge back up to where it's level with the top of that chip seal just a little
Okay.
bit and try to roll that in and pack it. So the water still gets off of it. It just doesn't tend to soak up, because that road base will soak it up and it'll hold it.
Yes, sir.
And it'll, I mean, that's been my experience. I don't plan
That's a
to
good
pull it all,
point.
Just, that's been our experience with it.
And that shoulder, I don't see any. I mean, you're going to naturally keep maintained the 20 feet, but the shoulder can grass over, and I mean, just have a hard base under it. But I do think the 4-foot shoulder is a little much. It's a very nice road section. I wouldn't recommend less than a 2-foot shoulder.
Normally, we'll do like a 22-foot stabilization and 20 foot on top.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's, as long as we can make that hard. If we're mixing Portland cement or lime, whatever, we can kind of get away with that, but if we're not using that, then.
Okay, so this is, what we're talking about here, right, is for subdivisions that are coming in?
And our roads we're building now.
Okay. So
Try to leave 6 inches to a foot of stabilized on each side of your paved surface, that way.
I'm more concerned with getting the center line of that ditch farther away from the edge of my road, so that whenever things back up, like what Tommy was talking about earlier, it's not, because the ditch bottom's not ever going to stay the same. It's going to vary from time to time. You may have to go back in there and clean it out. And if it ever starts holding water, people burn their leaves in the bottom of the ditch, they do whatever, then you get a little hump there, and then water starts holding. And next thing you know, if it's not, we want to keep it as far away as we can from the edge of the road and as deep as we can. Sometimes we can't do that because of existing utilities.
Yes, sir.
But where we can, we like to.
And I guess there are so many different combinations of possibilities for your roadway, and I think what we're trying to represent in this section is the most standard roadway. What I've seen of late is anybody who has to build a road as part of their subdivision is they're going to want to go they want to make as much money as they can and keep it as cheap as they can. So they're going to want to go with a flex base driving surface. I believe what we establish as the minimum standard, they can always improve on that. Go ahead.
The way we're set up now, though, if they build this road, and it's gonna be 2 years before we take it anyway.
Right.
At least 2 years before we take it. So, you know, if it's you have base failure or whatever, and that time they get it built to whenever we take it, they've got to go back in and redo it.
Yes, sir.
They're gonna have to build a decent road up front now, or it's gonna cost them in the long run.
I would like to see, I want some shoulder on there. This is y'all's ordinance. I would recommend that.
Yeah, I understand.
I would like to see some shoulder on there. And I guess my concern is if we're going to do only 1 foot beyond the edge of road, that we make that requirement of that base material 22 foot. And then still have the minimum driving surface of 20 foot, and here's what that does. If you do go in with a chip seal, you make sure and you hit when they're shooting the chip seal, you make sure you hit the base material underneath it. You leave yourself 1 foot of wiggle room in doing that. And I think we should consider a possibility of a minimum base of 22 foot. And then a minimum driving surface of 20.
Covered.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's obviously everybody's decision, but it's just been my experience that it'll start. I can take you places now, and it starts breaking off, you know. You have
Right.
to go back in there and
Any
fix it.
subdivision?
Subdivisions, Onalaska Loop, just different places that we have.
So the base material is breaking off on you?
Well, sometimes what'll
Or you
happen.
chip and seal?
Sometimes what'll happen is if you've got the width, the base material's a little bit wider.
Right.
Over times, the big trucks, most cases, it's not high speed, but it can be heavy.
Right.
And whenever it rains a lot and that base there's nothing covering that base, it'd get a little bit soft and they get over there on that edge. You know, on an inside curve, it don't matter how wide you make an inside
They're gonna
curve,
cut it.
people are always gonna hug that edge.
Yes,
It
sir.
don't matter.
Yep.
They're all race car drivers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyway, if that base is a little bit wider and they're hugging that inside curve and we have a wet winter, it's gonna come apart. It's just a matter of
Right.
time.
Right. And you're talking about the chip and seal coming apart, or the base itself?
Well, it starts off being the base, and then the chip seal ends up coming off with it.
Right.
You know.
Of course, with the other thought is when you've got a flex base driving surface, you've got something you can blade without it being a major operation. You could blade that after the storms. It's got any washing or anything on it, without having to redo it. But
What you saying, Ronnie, is on
Whatever
these
we
new
decide, I
subdivision
think it
rules, you
needs to
want
be
to cover, you
covered.
want to cover the whole thing.
That's what I'm
Not
saying.
leave the
Whatever,
shoulder.
whatever the court
Cover the
decides,
shoulder
at
and
your
all.
wishes, I think it needs to be covered.
Well, you got more subdivisions than I do. I
I understand.
I mean, I got roads that's not even 20 foot wide. You couldn't put a 20 foot wide covering on them anyway. You'd be covering the ditches.
And most of the
I mean,
roads that
no
we have are
All
going to be.
existing, though.
That's what I mean, you know,
Yeah.
but that's what I'm saying. We're talking about a whole brand new deal here. So
Yeah, yes,
if you
sir.
want to tell them that they got to cover the whole base, then that's,
That's what makes
mean,
sense, is to,
you got more experience with this.
I would
than
rather
do.
keep the center line of the ditch as far away from the edge of the road, even if we go to 22 feet and cover the whole 22 feet, but keep the center line of that ditch as far away from the edge of that road as possible.
okay, what we can do on this detail is to show a minimum requirement of 10 foot from the edge of the pavement, the edge of the
Well,
driving
if you go
surface
22
to the.
foot, you know, if you could be
Then you're
8
at
to
9.
10 feet to the center line of the road, so they've got a manageable back slope where they can mow it
Right.
with a zero turn or something like that. Because if not, they're going to want me to come and put culverts all down through there and fill it in, and so they can mow it flat. The Skyline fights that too.
yeah.
It's in the subdivisions, and then your ditch ends up being the road. So
Right.
we have to watch what we do on that. We make them put in tee boxes with drains and stuff like that, so the water funnels to those areas.
Okay.
So it's staying in the ditch, it's just in a culvert.
Do y'all want to, for the minimum
I know I'm trying to
road
complicate
requirement,
things,
do we
something
want
to
to
do
call
with
for a
everything.
chip and seal minimum? That's y'all's call. I see them all over, just done limestone, and
Oh, you're
not
talking
anything
about
on top
just
of
doing
it.
a limestone driving surface,
Yes, sir.
flex-based
Yes,
driving
sir.
surface.
Yeah,
not seal
and
coat on it.
that's what we currently provide for in the subdivision ordinance. It allows for a limestone base
So what you're
driving
saying is that
surface.
if we weren't gonna chip seal or high mac it, then we'd have our roads out there that'd be 28 foot wide with
Yes, sir.
rock?
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. And on a straightaway, I think you're going to see the traffic tend to the center of that road. But it provides enough hard surface to get over, and they're not going to, if they've got plenty of room to meet each other, they're not going to get over to the edge, the break point of your ditch and start knocking it off there in a straightaway. Curve, you're right. There's always going to be a tendency to cut that curve.
Okay, I have a question. The subdivision regulation, are you all considering accepting subdivisions that do not have chip seal roads on them?
No.
Okay.
No,
then-
because if you did, the first thing everybody in that subdivision, well, when you gonna pave my road? I'd rather make that subdivider pave that road.
So the way I've
before the
handled
county
it,
had to
I
do
guess
it.
that's my point. My point is that, I don't know, and we have plenty of subdivisions that used
Already.
to have good lime-based roads, and,
so the way I've handled that, Judge, to answer your question, is if they're gonna have a gated community, which means that the county
private.
can never take over those roads. They'll always be private.
They can
It's
do
up to
whatever they
them
want.
whether they have a rock road or not. But if it's not going to be a gated community, then I think we ought
Yeah.
to
Chip seal.
make them,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
But on the flip side of that, if I have a development on one of my rural rock, gravel, iron ore roads to lead to that, are you gonna make him chip and seal that road in there, in that subdivision?
Well, I think you would, yeah, I think you would need to.
Well, what about the driving surface from wherever they're 3 miles off the highway and they're driving on rock, gravel, bituminous road?
Well, hopefully
That is
I
eventually.
think there should, I mean, we've had it to where there's a variance, you know, for that part, for situations like that. But, I mean,
I think that you,
We can, I mean,
that you have
apparently
to,
from what I seen, what y'all did, we can always give any a variance whenever we want to.
But it
No
needs to
matter
be
what.
consistent.
yep.
Yep.
yes.
It's got to be consistent across the board.
And here's the issue. Okay, if you allow a subdivision to come in and build just the dirt roads, okay, you don't know what the maintenance is gonna look like in 10, 15, 20 years. All those little subdivisions we have out by the
I know,
lake,
we
they
agree.
all got promises of all
Some of the
kinds.
developers
Some all
obviously do a
over.
better job
Yeah.
than others.
And so I just, I don't know that for perpetuity purposes that would serve us.
But I'm just saying, if they've got to drive 2 miles off a state maintained road on a rock road and then turn in on a chip and seal road or paved road
Well.
They're gonna
then
eventually
your goal
complain.
becomes to pave that 2-mile road.
for that,
Then we gotta come
We'd
see
get
you.
a subdivided, pave a road for us.
Currently, our standard says that your private road has to be built to our public road standards, even if they're going to maintain it from here on. So if we created two standards, we would have to modify that as well, not
also
make them
believe
follow
if you
that.
look it up, it says we can't require them to build a road
Any greater than what
any
we do.
greater than what we build. That's what we've been taught in class.
Okay, but we're talking, you build two different kinds of roads, right?
No.
You don't build chip and seal?
Yeah, we build chip and seal, but we build a lot of rock roads too.
Okay, so you build two kinds of roads, correct? The chip and seal and the rock roads. So I guess my issue would be that if you're gonna have someone build a subdivision, why would you hold them down to the lower standards instead of the higher standards, so that the people that live there have at least some guarantee of good roads?
I'm just saying that you can't require them to build anything any stringenter than what we build.
Well,
Yeah, but
I understand
I'm
what
not
you're saying.
building any roads. My roads are already there.
Well, that's what
I'm
I'm
just
saying.
trying to maintain the damn
It's
thing.
all maintenance.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
we're not, but if you're gonna build a new one, if I was gonna build a new one, I would try my best to do it this way.
Yeah.
But I mean,
but
That's
they-
what we're
that's what
doing
I've
now,
always wondered
rebuilding our
about this
roads.
whole thing, what you're talking about is because, I ain't got a road one that's gonna be as good as what they're building when they get to it.
And when they buy that piece of property and they decide that they want to develop that, they know how our road is before they ever start. So,
Just saying when it comes up, well, I'm driving on 3 miles of rock or gravel or whatever to get down here now, I got a chip and seal.
Oh, heck,
Hey,
I've been doing that for 30 years.
I know it. All the rest of us have too, but I'm just saying that.
Now we don't.
All
now
we're
they
doing is
don't.
rebuilding roads, and when we rebuild a road, we try to go in there and make it, go in there, mill it up, add cement to it, or lime, whichever it calls for, and make it a little bit wider if we have the width.
Okay, I just think that
But
you need
anyway.
to come up with whatever your standards are going to be for subdivisions. Because whether
Oh, yeah.
they're gated or not gated, sooner or later, some of those may become your responsibility.
well, if it's gated, it won't become our responsibility.
never,
And that's the
because
reason
it's
why I've
private.
never pushed
Everything's
the
completely
issue
private.
to have them chip seal or high mac behind a gated community. Now, if it's not going to be a gated community, I would like to see us have it in the standards where it has to be asphalted or chip seal, at least chip sealed. And be there a minimum of 2 years before a commissioner could entertain the idea of possibly turning those roads brought into the county MSAC. So,
Okay.
My only concern with doing an improved surface, whether it's chip and seal, hot mix, hot sand, is that it takes a whole lot more, it's a lot bigger deal to maintain it. Whereas if you've got a gravel surface, you can maintain it with a maintainer and a little extra material. But usually you're not going to be equipped to come in and repair and redo a road, reshape a road, and over time it just becomes a patchwork. And that's the biggest problem I've seen with
And
hard
that's
surfaces
what-
on
that's
county
the
roads.
issue. That's the problem we have.
Yeah, that's the purpose of trying to go to what we're going to. I understand what you're saying, but people that come to the lake and they build $400,000 or $500,000 homes, they don't really want to be running on a gravel
You're right.
surface, you know.
I like driving in clean cars.
Well, and they don't want to go falling into 4-foot deep potholes.
And the time, from the time that they do it until the time that the county could entertain the idea of possibly taking the road over, how good a job is that developer going to do of maintaining that gravel road? Some may do a good job, some may not do a good job.
Right.
So we need to have
Which-
some standards.
Which if it comes time for y'all to accept it and it's not up to par, you don't accept it. I
Well, I
mean,
understand that, but we still get the phone calls from.
Right, right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And
Yep.
we can't force the developer to go out there and do something. So a lot of them develop HOAs and they do well, and then some of them don't do well.
Right.
So
Okay. So we okay on that one? Do you have another specific thing, Chad?
What do we
that you-
decide on this? What's the width on this?
Well, I guess the first question in my mind is, will we require public roads to be chip and sealed at minimum? Is that the
that's
consensus
the way
that
they're
we would?
written
Yes.
now.
Okay.
I'm going to say, I'm going to vote yes.
I believe your current ordinance or regulation does not require chip and seal.
Okay.
It allows a limestone base surface. So chip and seal minimum.
Minimum.
Okay. On the public as well as the private roads. That way, if somebody builds a private road, then
other words,
we can still hold them to the same standard as if it were public. I believe that's fair, and I believe that keeps it the simplest if we do that.
So, behind the gated,
Well, that's what I've done in the past. If it's behind a gated community,
that's what I'm saying.
I've not required them to do the chip seal or anything. If it's been
Okay.
open, then we've required them to do the chip and seal. Because we can't go in and do the maintenance anyway, no matter how long it's, a gated community. And they stipulate in the plating that it will always be a gated community, cannot be changed.
No, always be a
Private road.
private
So
road.
in other words, a
So-
POA, POAs are wonderful, and I got 28 of them that I work with, and they're always changing hands, but it's like you get a new set of people on there, and they've all got their own agenda, which is usually pave the road in front of their house. And so as we have a lot of turnover, they may try to change those laws that are within
Okay.
within the deed restrictions.
So what I'll do is modify this so that the public roads require at minimum a chip and seal on a flexible 6 inches flex base with properly treated subgrade. The private roads will allow limestone surface.
or compatible, crushed concrete, or.
Sure. Or
Limestone, yeah.
iron ore,
Bituminous
if
road.
they can find it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And then on here, it
If-
has 6 inches minimum base. I think that needs to be 6 inches of compacted minimum base.
Okay, and I tried to keep this as simple as possible to get our terminology right so that when they refer to the written parts with all the details in it, that this matches it. But there's a lot of detail I've left off of this.
Oh, yeah.
I can add it to it for certain.
Well, it doesn't have
No.
anything about the subgrade.
And that subgrade information is contained in the body of the.
Yeah, I read that with the densities and all that.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
Yes, sir, I
But-
read that.
What we can do on this is so that they know that there's another reference for standards that has additional standards, is refer to the ordinance, the body of the ordinance itself for all requirements. And even for the subgrade, we could point in and say, refer to ordinance body and properly for subgrade requirements. We can do that. I tried to keep this one
Yeah.
simple. But I also need consistency between this one and the body of it. So do y'all want to put it on there or just refer to the ordinance?
You could do both. You could
Yeah, I
have
would
one
do
page
both.
showing one
Okay.
and then one page showing all the information.
Okay.
That way, all the information's available.
I can modify this detail to get all of the information that's shown in the body of our ordinance on this detail. What we want to be careful of is this, is when we change it in the future, that we change it in all places.
Yeah.
That's the only hazard of having it scattered all over is
Yeah.
when we decide to up our standards or lower our standards, we change it in one spot and then we're held to the least restrictive because both of them are
Couldn't
in
you
there.
have two drawings that show the basis of what we're trying to do, and then have another picture that shows the details of the compaction and stuff like that?
I could get it all on here. It's just going to be pretty busy.
That's what
But
I
I typically on a typical road section, I do get all the information on there. And I was just trying to, I took the drawing from the ordinance that we have adopted now and tried to keep it to the same simplicity as that one. And that was the purpose of what I was doing here. But yes, sir, I could get it all on here. And so, okay, with the public road, we're going to require a minimum 20-foot wide chip and seal surface. But are y'all okay with doing a 22-foot base? And my concern there is that when we shoot that chip and seal, we make sure and hit the footprint of that base. Give them some wiggle room on each side.
I personally would like to see them cover the whole thing myself.
Okay. So we'll,
Longevity. But I mean, when I build a road, it's a 20-foot road, and we
Okay.
encapsulate the sides. It's not 22 foot because Judge won't give me no more money, so I got to keep it to a minimum. So, you know, and all of our roads are 35 miles an hour anyway. We're not going too fast.
Yes, sir.
You know, so they just got to, you know, if they can't keep it at 10 foot right away, don't need a driver's license.
all right. That you mentioned
Whatever-
something that got me
whatever
on.
the width that the court decides, I would like to see it all covered.
All the same. Okay. So that takes us to
22 foot.
basically no shoulder. Okay.
Yep.
So
Most
if
of the
we're
time in
not-
subdivision, you're going to be in what the people consider their yard anyway as soon as you get off the road.
Okay.
So that ain't that. We go to the edge, although we own to the telephone pole.
Right.
Thankfully, they mow it, so I kind of let them consider that it's there, so they help me maintain.
So if we do a 22-foot improved surface, chip and seal, on top of a 20-foot base, did I say 22-foot chip and seal? I meant to say 20-foot. 20-foot chip and seal, 20-foot base. With the ditch line 10 foot on each side beyond the edge of road. That allows us a little more flexibility on reducing the required slope of that front slope of that ditch. Right now we've got a 4-to-1, which would allow us, without exceeding that, to have a 30-inch deep ditch from the edge. Y'all want to keep that at 4-to-1? 4-to-1's a good slope, and they're not in peril if they get a tire off on it.
Yeah.
So, okay. Any questions?
Alan?
Yeah. When you get back to your width and the shoulder, how hard would it be to make them stripe the road? It's been my experience that you give somebody a little bit of guidance, they'll probably stay off that shoulder and put a stripe on it.
And that makes a good point. Whenever we put in the Onalaska Loop, it's about a mile long,
Yeah.
and traffic's only supposed to go 35 miles an hour, but it's not in a subdivision, so people tend to want to exceed that a little bit, especially if they're running late to school. And we run just one single yellow center line, stripe down the center line, and that really seemed to help keep people back up on the road, especially in inclement weather. They have something to kind of go by.
Yes, sir.
But that brings up a good point.
And on those county,
I don't know about doing it in a subdivision, because typically, there's not much distance between areas where they got a turn or something like that, but I know out on our roads, you know, center lines helped me. It's not very expensive, but
the only concern about center line is that's something else to maintain as it starts wearing away. But yeah, if y'all want center
I don't
line on it, we
know
can
about
require
it
it.
being a requirement, but
That's the
Okay.
only way it's gonna get done, is be required.
yeah, I don't know about in the subdivision, but anyway.
Let me make one more suggestion, and this is just regarding, you are going to have times people come off the edge of that road. I would like to see, because the stabilization and the rock placement aren't a precise art, I would like to see a requirement for the stabilization of the subgrade to be at least 1 foot wider than the road base itself, which leaves us between the top of the stabilized subgrade and that 6 inches of limestone base. That leaves us a spot to fill in. How would y'all feel about, and we've done this and it's been very successful, especially with holding up, is backfilling that with compacted limestone base. That taper, which is part of the front slope of the ditch, but it provides another foot after you've got off in the ditch of hard surface that's not going to slosh away so bad when it's wet. In other words, backfill that edge, dress up that edge with compacted limestone. Makes for a really solid road section, and you're not taking up any more space there. Contractors don't like it so much just because it's picky work. But if they don't backfill it with limestone, they're going to backfill it with general fill, which winds up being
Well, what they're going to
muck.
end up doing is they're just going to make their base, instead of 20 foot wide, they're just going to make their base 22 foot wide and then chip seal 20 feet. That's what they're going to do.
Would that be
I'm okay with
Well,
that.
I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. My experience has been that when that base sits there and it soaks that water up, it's gonna end up underneath that chip seal. Well, it's going to end up underneath whatever.
But if it's on the slope of the front slope of your ditch, which is a minimum of 4 to 1, that water's going to do a good job of getting off of there. And if it's topsoil, if it's general fill, I believe it's going to soak it up more than your limestone with all that aggregate would. And I think you're going to hold up better. And I'm not always good about keeping all the tires on the flat part of the road. Sure like it when it's hard when they get them off.
I understand.
And I think you'd wind up with a lot better longevity on this road if we did backfill
So
it
you
that
want that
way.
foot to be contoured in with the contour of the slope, is what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Not a flat surface.
Right. And you basically dressing up the edge would be with compacted limestone. And it's got the treated subgrade underneath it because the subgrade is a foot wider. We haven't given up footprint, and I think we're way ahead on the longevity of our road and the serviceability of our road.
All right.
One more question you brought up a while ago, and I just want to make sure we get this resolved right. Let me see, subgrade limestone. Okay. You said all your roads are 35 miles an hour.
Well, we're talking about subdivisions.
Yes, sir. The
Without an action of the court, they cannot be lower
okay.
by Texas law.
Each individual road has to be studied.
Correct. And it has to be voted on by the court to be lowered.
The Appendix S, and this is going to be in the existing ordinance. It's a table back there, and I don't know what. It used to be on page 73. Does that sound right? Yes, sir. And I'm looking at that first column addressing a local street with a service of 1 to 1,000 average daily traffic. We show on that a minimum speed or a design speed of 25 miles an hour.
When you
And-
say 0 to 1,000, you're meaning amount of
That's
people or distance?
passenger cars, one-way trips. So if you live in there, you drive to work and come home, there's 2. And that's going to be probably most of your roads. That's a lot of trips. And that column there is what we're demonstrating in this exhibit and what we address in the body of our ordinance. And this is for local streets. We really focus in on those streets.
To make them 25?
Yes, sir. This table calls it a 25-mile-an-hour design
But can we do
speed.
that by Texas statute?
Make them
25?
25 miles an hour. What we could do.
'Cause
We've
I
got it
was
that
under
way
the
right
impression
now.
We had to be petitioned in order to lower it below 35 miles an hour.
Okay. I hate to. Then what we do if we're on that is we'll go ahead and make that column 35 miles an hour. Make that the design speed for a local road.
Yeah, I
so
think Texas law says that we have to be petitioned
Okay.
in order to lower it below 35 miles an hour.
That's familiar to me, but I'm not a lawyer. I've
Well,
heard that.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
I've
what
heard
they
that.
tell us at school.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's make that 35 miles an hour design speed for this local street. Do y'all have any questions about what we've sort of come up with as a consensus on this today? I can repeat it if y'all want to, but otherwise I'm going to take this back. I'll modify this detail, mark up the ordinance as we talked about, and get it back to Kerry.
Jed, I know that you need to go. Is there anything on the other sections, the non-public water system, allowing developers to use existing wells or test wells in certain situations to confirm the quantity and quality of water available?
Yes, ma'am. I would. We don't. My understanding, and I haven't done a lot of water work in Polk County. My understanding is water's not hard to find here. Just in Angelina County, it is. Depending on where you're at in the county, it's hard to find. I think that requirement is a little bit onerous. It came in the adoption of the Texas Water Development Board's model subdivision ordinance. The way I've sort of allowed that or recommended to the developers that they address that is basically give me an instance nearby showing, look, they've got a well here. It's been, not declined. Give me an engineer's statement regarding it. But I think that is a little onerous.
Okay. And that was one of the recommendations that we included. And then Section 8, under on-site sewage facilities, you recommended the addition of item D stating that the site evaluation will not be required for plat approval since most septic systems are not installed until after the subdivision has been approved.
Yes, ma'am. And I recommended that after correspondence with y'all's health department. That is typically once you have a plan to occupy that place, you're going to put a house on it. You may put it up front, you may put it in the back. That site evaluation needs to be tailored to that and done at that time. Otherwise, we've got a passel of site evaluations in here that we're trying to tie to something. It's better to address that when they get ready to develop each lot and build on each lot.
So does that have anything to do with the topo that we're requiring on the plat every 2 feet to 3 feet?
Yes, sir, it does, but the bigger requirement for the topo is to see what the drainage is doing. See if we've got any drainage issues we need to deal with.
My concern would be, from what I'm told, and I'm not a lawyer neither, is that if we didn't require the topo to be of a certain graduation, that if later on they put in a septic system and they have problems with it due to maybe water that could be standing on the property or water that may come from another property onto their property, and that system was to fail, that it could set the court up for liability.
That's right, and I think your health department is going to be looking at those contours for on-site concerns. My bigger reason for looking at it is for the actual drainage. I'm hesitant. We had the requirement to have the contours on the plat. I'm hesitant to do that because a contour is not permanent. It's something that it may look this way, a nice smooth slope today. They get a traco in there tonight and it'll look different tomorrow, and I hate to have that file of record. Plus it junks up the plat. Yeah, there's data available now for entire Polk County, as I understand, to be able to drop that in on the plat. But I'm trying to put that requirement on the developer rather than me getting into the engineering and trying to fiddle with it and do it when it comes to me.
Judge, could I, Mr. Young, could I get your input on that?
Yes, you can. From a designer standpoint of view, I want to be there on site at the very last minute before the system goes in. That topo map that's developed during the
Beginning?
beginning is no good.
Okay.
I wouldn't even look at it because, like you said, it can change overnight, and I want to see what's most accurate. So, on-site visit is the way that on-site sewer facilities are or should be determined, not by something from several months back filed.
So before they bring the dirt in and change the landscape,
Move it around.
it doesn't tell you
It
anything.
doesn't tell me what
Yeah.
I need to know for a sewer system.
Okay.
Okay, so with that being said, my concern was what I went back to a while ago. So would we or would we not be, could we be liable, could the court be liable for any future lawsuit if we didn't require those?
I don't know. I don't know. I can find that out, but I just don't
I
know.
just
It was
Well,
my understanding from training that we would be. You know, that if we
Well,
didn't
that's what I'm
require for
concerned about. I
drainage
mean-
to occur correctly, then we would be.
Now,
Gary, do you have anything you can add to that?
Well, I would, one of the two issues that I had for you guys was in relationship to sewer versus where this person could put a private water well. Because you know, there's a distance, a minimum standard to the tanks is 50 feet, from the leach field or any contaminated source is 100 feet. Some of the plans that we've been seeing, the lots are so tiny or narrow that depending on where their neighbors put their septic, or maybe a feed lot or something, that person, if they don't have a public water supply access, they'll never get a water well. They'll have a piece of land they own they can't get water on. And that was what I wanted to point out to you. This is happening already twice in San Jacinto County. We've had to unapprove lots twice.
I had that one on me, they built, they have to be cemented wells.
Yes, sir. If a water well is pressure cemented, it can be up to 5 foot from the property
Yeah,
line.
that's way.
But I've approved 4 subdivisions for you in the past. The lots were always pretty large, like 2-acre lots. It didn't come into plan, but
So-
the plans for San Jacinto, they've had 2 recently that were so small, they couldn't get water wells.
I
So
did
they-
have one that was a bunch of flag lights they put in on our current system.
Yes.
And they had to have cemented wells down there on one of mine.
Most
most of
drillers
them-
now use cemented by default. They don't really go uncemented anymore. So they all can go up to that 5 feet. But it's that contamination source of the
Yeah.
septic tank that's the problem.
Yeah.
And so either, my recommendation to you guys is what San Jacinto did, either they make the lots bigger, a minimum size, or they made the developer stipulate on the plans where water wells would go, like say on the front of the properties, and septic's in the back. And so I'll continue to review the plans if y'all send them to my office, but there's been a lot of development lately, and San Jacinto, I've done 6 and 2 were bad.
So if the water well is cemented, how close can a leach field line be within that?
You're still 100 feet away. Has cemented water well, it only refers to the property line, not
Oh.
contamination source.
Okay. Property
Only the
line.
property line,
Okay,
not
I got you.
contamination.
Okay, but what would be, if they were pushing the issue of room, what
Yes.
would be the requirement of the distance that a leach field line could be,
100
or a
feet.
spray field line, either
100
one?
feet.
Has to be a minimum of 100 feet?
Yes.
Okay.
Any contamination source. A leach field, a feed lot, a poultry barn, anything, soil storage,
Outhouses.
fertilizer storages, it's 100 feet. And so you could buy a piece of.
And that
land
includes
you can't get
drainage,
water.
there'd be no drainage to it, even if it's 200 feet away, it can't drain by it.
No, you don't want
Okay.
your water well to get contaminated, right? It's gonna leach into the soil.
Sure, I
and
understand.
drink poisonous water.
Yeah.
So that's a state regulation, that's not our groundwater. We enforce the state's minimum guidelines. Some water
That's
districts
also
have a
where your
minimum
topo
lot
would
size
come
that we
into
have, but we didn't establish that for
Yeah.
Polk County. So.
Yeah, I
I see
think
what you said
the-
about this topo though, because we can require it, but by the time they build a house there and everything, they've done changed what these lots look
Yeah,
like.
the topo has
And so the
changed.
topo's actually no good.
I believe the way we've tried to address this in the past, because this is there are a lot of factors to look at, is we've put the requirement in there for engineers' participation in the subdivision. And that really typically we don't have an engineer sign a plat. And that's really where we're having a sticking point, is where's the engineer's report? Where's the engineer's report? And the purpose of having the engineer involved is to look at all those issues to see if they're on a case-by-case addressed. But that is, I've been doing engineering for 20-plus years and never had to sign a plat. And that's how we've handled it in the past, but that's not working too well.
We dodged it.
That's not working too
We
well.
handled it by
should
dodging
we or
it.
should we not have require topo 2 to 3 foot?
Yes, sir.
per-
Yes, sir.
We should,
Yes, sir. And here's why.
but that doesn't affect the on-site sewage deal, correct?
Yes,
would be
that's
two
one
separate-
issue. There are two other issues. One's the drainage, but the other is documenting a point in history of what that topography looked at, like at
Originally.
one time. Yes, sir. Because there are whole other legal issues regarding changing that drainage. You get somebody that comes in and puts up a retaining wall and says, your water's not coming on my property. Or you concentrated, it didn't used to be concentrated. If we establish, we don't have to file a record, but we have it in the package. We have it available to go back on if that becomes an issue.
So
And
it's two separate things. We need
Three,
to-
yes,
We need
sir.
to still require the topo in the beginning.
Right.
And then, but that does not affect, that requirement does not affect what we need for on-site sewage.
Correct.
I
'Cause
think it does, because your on-site requirements, don't they have a minimum slope?
That's
Uh,
fair.
Well,
That's over there.
Associated.
I'm water, sewer.
Okay.
They were talking down there.
Miss Becky and Tiara.
Hey, you've got a minimum slope requirement for your on-site.
30%, but basically, we don't want any water to pull up on our in-ground systems, our conventional systems when they're in ground.
Right.
That's gonna make them fail. So there needs to be, our installers know they have to divert that water. Our homeowners are being told the same thing. After it settles, we need to make sure that you're mounting to keep the water away from your drain field area, because we don't want it inundated with heavy rainfall that's just gonna sit there for a couple of days. So,
I
And we have
believe
had, we have had several incidences in the county where someone went through, got a small bulldozer, rerouted the water the way they wanted it to go. See, all the TRA guys are
Right,
around
and
here.
especially you get over in precinct
And then they
1,
flood someone else.
where there's some heavy soils where, a conventional system is probably not the ideal way to go.
Percolation over there.
There's not much percolation.
Like that
You know, if
spray
you don't have
irrigation
raw,
or
it really
drip.
don't work.
Correct.
So,
Okay. Jed, I know you have to go because
I'm sorry.
sorry, Jed.
he has a family.
Well, it's a good meeting, and we can pick this up. We can pick this up at the next meeting, or however y'all want to do that.
I think we've answered most of the questions. I think part of it is to discuss the minor subdivision regulation in public areas, but that, we'll talk to Alan Cook and some of the developers about that. I know the redheads in the back will be happy.
And RVs.
And then we also need to talk about RVs. So, thank you, though, we appreciate it.
Thank
Does
y'all
anyone
for
have
having
more
me.
questions?
No,
And we
right
can
now.
certainly email you questions.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm available if I need to come down and we discuss it some more in a workshop. In the meantime, I will get these reflecting what we discussed, particularly the road standards.
Sounds good.
Thank y'all.
you.
Y'all have a
Thank you,
good
Jed.
day.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, Jed.
Phones in there, too.
Okay, Alan, you want to come talk to us about minor subdivision regulations?
Do I need to step up to the lectern?
Yes, sir, you do.
Hey, you gotta get on the camera now.
Mostly when you need your voice recorded.
It's just what we've discussed in the past about the minor subdivision plats that we're talking about, small pieces of property. We're not talking about huge developments. We're talking about usually 5 acres or less. And I guess that would be a case-by-case basis. But to see that, you know, you've got an orphan piece of property, they have no other contiguous tracts that join it to do a small development where they just want to get rid of the property. We're talking about 4 or fewer lots. Minimum size is whatever it would take to satisfy sewage, on-site sewage facilities, if they've got the room to do it. Being able to get those approved, they're basically more for information than anything. That, hey, we had this tract, we've divided it up, and that's a way to slough off the property without having to go through such a stringent process where you're not going to be laying out any public space whatsoever.
No interior roads.
No interior road. But that's going to bring us to the next question, something that's, I'm sorry, Milt.
No, go ahead.
The one thing that that's come up in all of this, especially since the TxDOT access management plan has come into play, what I want to be careful on the minor subdivision plats is that if they have to lay out reverse laterals or interior roads that parallel the main road with one access to get to the rest of the lots, that it doesn't constitute a public roadway. What I'm trying to say is that
Basically be driveways.
it's basically going to have just everybody's lot ties into one road out there in the front that the county's not going to take maintenance on. It's basically not going to be a public road. It's going to be for the use of those lots and those lots only to get out to the highway.
So it would be a road perpendicular off, say, the main highway?
Yeah.
And those 4 lots would access that road, which would lead to the highway?
Because if you've got a tract that's got less, especially if it's on the highway somewhere where speeds are posted at 55 or greater, you're only going to have one access if you have less than, let's say, 500 feet of road frontage. You're only going to get one.
Driveways
No,
right
sir.
next
No, they're not going to let you have that.
That's one of the issues that we've.
What I'm trying to make sure is if the minor subdivision plat thing goes through where it's not a stringent process, that the laying out of those laterals or backage roads, whatever you want to call them, that doesn't constitute laying out a roadway that would fall under a different part of
these rules.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Exactly.
That it would just be like a shared driveway.
Basically, that's what it's going to
That's why I
be.
keep saying that, if it's a shared driveway, then.
But it's going to look like an easement on that
I was
plat
gonna say it'd be-
because the guy down here, the farthest, is going to have to come all the way down here to use that. So it's going to look like a roadway is what it's going to look like.
Well, we just gave you a little common sense is all you can tell.
TxDOT's going to have to sign off, as the current subdivision regulations stand, TxDOT has to sign off on the access.
And it goes out.
Right.
Anyway,
We just
TxDOT has
done
to-
one that's got, just like what you're saying, it's got, but they put a drive, TxDOT allowed them to put a driveway at each center property line.
Right.
And so 2 houses more or less gonna come out on one driveway, and then there's a flag
Exactly.
lot behind it, so that's gonna be 3 that's gonna access, but that's just culverts on the road, it's not those lateral roads like we're
Right,
talking
right.
about.
That's
Make that lateral road just a driveway.
Okay,
Type deal.
so do you all want to consider basically saying that 4 lots or less, or 5 lots or less?
I got something that's been eating me up about this stuff. Say, I got 5 acres,
I know exactly.
I got
where
5
you're going,
kids.
Milton Rivers.
and I got 5 kids, and I want to give every one of them an acre. It's none of my business or anybody else's business if I want to give them that land. I should not have to subdivide it. I should be able to give
But
my
you're
5
exempt.
kids.
You're exempt at that point because of the third degree of continuity, or whatever that $50 word is.
That wasn't it?
You're exempt from the planning process. What is
You give it to your
I'll
sister, you
acquiesce to the judge's pronunciation of it, but
Yeah.
they're within that third degree of relationship, basically, is what it
Yeah.
amounts to.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
You can do
But I don't know.
it.
I've been frustrated here lately with this process.
That's where nepotism is to your advantage.
There you go. The
One and only place.
But
If there's consanguinity, matrilineal, anything like that, then you can give it to them.
okay, well, I think we're getting into a lot of people's business where we
But
don't need to be a lot of
Well,
times.
if we'd been into their business a long time ago, we wouldn't be having these discussions either, probably, to a certain degree.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
well,
But back to this minor subdivision thing, I mean, we're talking about just one piece of property. If they've got 80 acres that joins it, we know where that's headed.
Yeah.
You know, and they just want to cut
common
off
sense.
4 acres, you know, four little lots, that's all I'm going to do. And then next year do the same thing. We'd see where that's headed.
Yeah, and we've dealt with that. Alan
Right.
knows that we've dealt with that. We had people come in and say, no, I only own this 10 acres right here, but they own the 250 that's behind it. And they
Right.
said, we're just gonna do 4 little houses right here, that's it.
Well, you
But
get to call
then-
that phase 1.
Yeah, but then you start looking at it as, no, they've got plats and plans and,
And the reason I bring it is because we already have, this vehicle's already there for people to divide up property within the city. The city has allowed the minor subdivision plat process.
basically,
you're not
we would
dealing
just
with
get
as much land.
intended.
You're not dealing with much, but you're not laying anything out for public dedication whatsoever. There's infrastructure's already there. You're not extending utilities. It's already there. The only thing you're doing is deeding out 4 pieces of property or less to somebody that may want to build a house on
I
it.
would make a suggestion that the lots need to be at least an acre. At
Well,
least.
whatever the minimum size is to do on-site sewage facility.
Yeah, and that
way we're
can be,
covered.
and the details
Absolutely.
can be figured out, hammered out later. Right now, we just need to know if the court is interested in proceeding with that.
I think it'd be a good thing. There's a lot of little pieces of land, even in the rural areas laid out like that, that somebody can, they can move without having to go through a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay,
I'm
so,
all for it.
so would you be interested in us getting the minor subdivision regulations from the city of Livingston?
Yes.
And just kind of tailoring it off of that? And we'll get Alan to help us, and we'll tailor it off of that, and then that way we're consistent with the city of Livingston as well.
And Jed sent me a copy of the Angelina County's minor subdivision regulation. I'll send them.
Okay,
you,
send
too.
that to us
And you
as well.
you can compare them, see if
That'd be
it's, you know,
great.
you know,
Yeah,
see if
I'm
you
always
got
interested in what somebody
what's
else
better
does.
and worse or whatever. But he just sent them to me this morning, so I hadn't read them all yet.
Also, while we're at it, I have another question too.
Go ahead.
And I apologize if this is not the most current standards, but these are the ones that I downloaded online. And back to roads, on page 40, I don't know if those are going to coincide with what y'all have or not. And I'll give you a chance to get there.
You're gonna have to read it to me, because I don't have what you've got.
This is number 8 on that page.
I think, wasn't number
Cul-de-sac.
8 one of those?
Yeah.
Cul-de-sac.
What is a minimum length of 600 linear feet? What does that mean?
Oh, no, y'all are on your own for that.
A cul-de-sac is normally, that's the arc, right?
Yeah, I assume that road coming in there has to be 600 feet long to have a cul-de-sac on it.
Yeah.
It's the way I took it, Alan.
So then we can't lay out a street with a length less than 600 feet?
I don't know.
Cul-de-sac.
No,
You
if
could,
it
it
has
just
a
may not have a
cul-de-sac.
cul-de-sac.
Well, I mean, if it dead ends, what if it's only 300 feet before it dead ends?
Yeah, so I'm with you. I see where you're going with it.
You still you can be 150 foot and you have a cul-de-sac on.
Well, basically, what is a cul-de-sac?
It's defined in here, this, on number 9.
50-foot
isn't it?
radius,
It's that radius.
it's a 50-foot radius at the end, so people have room to turn around.
Well, a 50-foot radius circle is not going to have 600 feet of linear length.
No, I get
It's
that.
less than 280 feet.
Yeah. That's,
Yeah, I think it's what Milt said.
that's all I
For
can
some
figure
reason-
out. And I don't know where that comes from. I mean,
That's confusing.
think no-
Let me put it this way, it's confusing. I
That may be
don't,
something that we need to delete.
I don't understand what
Have
the
your book and mark on it?
impetus for it was. How did
This
it
is
get here?
something that was copied out of Austin somewhere.
Yeah, we didn't put that in.
Hey.
I wanted to ask Jed, but he had to
This is something that
leave.
was sent to every commissioner for them to review. Okay, that's not a problem.
Okay.
I don't see a problem with it unless you all do, but I don't do subdivisions or
So,
roads.
on a little bit different subject, are we still sticking to the 10-acre minimum?
Yes, sir, because that's state.
Okay.
Yes, sir, that's state. And actually, we did do a further
Now,
clarification on that.
wait just a minute on the minor subdivisions. We're talking about usually tracts that are less than 10 acres.
No, he's
Okay,
talking
all right.
That's why I say it's a
He's
little
talking
bit
about
off
the
the
10
subject.
acre.
Okay.
So no, we will research that and get back with you.
Okay.
So that we can go through the Angelina County recommendations in the city and come up with something to present to the court. Will that work?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't know about the 600 feet out there. I figure if you laid one out, we wouldn't pay no attention whether it was 600 or not. We just go ahead and say that's okay. He wants to put a cul-de-sac
Can I
in there.
quote you on that?
Might as well.
Of course you can. Okay,
Yeah, I
so,
wouldn't catch it anyway. I put it that way. These other three might, but I
I ain't
probably
worried about
wouldn't.
you, I'm worried about Jed.
Yeah.
Yeah, now he'll catch it.
Well, that might be a question for
Maybe
Jed as to
we need to
the
tell
purpose
Jed
of
that we need to do something about
What's
that.
the?
I don't know.
the
We'll
600
find
feet?
out.
Just get
I'll find
clarity
out.
on that. Where's
We'll
the-
find out,
where's
we'll find out what the
next
purpose of
drawing?
that was. I mean, that's all we can do. Okay, to your question about the 10 acres, that's a state requirement. And so what we did was we clarified that section, which was section 8, to waive the filing fees, that any subdivision that had tracts that were 10 acres or more, every tract, now keep that in mind, every tract must be 10 acres or more. You know, not every
Well-
tract 10 and then a 2, a 6, and a 9.
I was approached by someone
Correct.
that had some land that was very linear, and it went down beside a farm to market road, and they were wanting to break it up into 6-acre tracts. So,
The state says 10.
okay.
Now, what we are requesting is that anybody that does subdivide into 10-acre tracts like that, that they go ahead and plat it, and they do not have to pay any fees. Shalana has agreed to waive the fees for platting of subdivisions that don't necessarily require platting.
But they do not have to.
They have to plat it.
No, they don't.
No,
Not
they
over
don't
10,
have
not
to.
over 10 acres, they don't have to plat
But
it.
we can ask them
We
just to
can
send
ask-
us.
We're just
say-
asking.
At least
send
get us a map,
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
That's what we're doing.
a survey.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there you
send
go.
us-
Not a
send us-
map, but a survey
Yeah,
of
send
it.
us the survey.
Yeah.
That's what Rayonier.
Yeah, that's what I,
Yes, and
that's what I
that's-
asked.
An outline of the
Yeah.
how it's laid
Yeah.
out.
That's what we're requesting, because then that way, we have a map, and then it's clear to the surveyors, it's clear to the realtors, the developers, to everybody, what's what and where. And in that case, since they are not required to plat, then we will waive the fees. If they will just go ahead and take the information up to the clerk's office.
What is that information?
Bob?
And that's only in the case where there's not any
Bob, can you
public
come up
road.
to the top?
Oh.
You have to come up to the front.
The 10 acres is only when you don't have to build any roads?
Yes, sir.
Public
Okay.
common areas or anything like that.
Okay.
When they are already on a state, farm-to-market, county-maintained road, then,
So you're not going to have to go through this
no,
process?
sir,
but
you're not gonna have to go through
But
any
the county
process
is
at all.
asking for a plat, which is reasonable.
Yes, but,
You're
and
going to survey it anyway, so.
it's not gonna cost you anything.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-oh, here comes Alan.
And now see,
This is-
now Rayonier did
This has
one.
been a thorn in the side from the get-go. I love platted subdivisions. From
Obviously.
a surveyor standpoint, we love them. From a developer standpoint, doesn't it change the value of the property once you file that plat? Let's say you got 100 acres.
No, sir, I checked with Chad.
Okay, so it's not
I checked with Chad
gonna,
Hill, because what we had been told is we don't wanna plat it, because then you're gonna take away our ag exemption. No, sir. That piece of property, the ag exemption, is not removed until it sells to someone else. When that 10-acre tract sells to someone else, then you get a notice, right, that says, you just recently brought this property, are you filing for ag exemption? If you say yes, then you go through the process on your own.
and the developer's remaining tracts
Remain
would
as
still
ag.
remain intact?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. No, I clarified that with Chad, because that was a concern.
Now see, now Rayonier did one that was, the tracks released from 5 to 8, and some of them were over 10. And then I gave them a variance on their, I don't remember what it was, either the 5 or 10 foot on their topo, because the lots were larger than 5 acres apiece. I can't remember, that's been a couple of years ago.
And that was
But they
because-
did have to do the plat in the whole 9 yards.
But they have to do the
But you
whole
gave them the
thing.
variance on the topo
Topo,
because of the
yeah.
amount of land that each lot had.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Allen?
Uh-oh.
Come on.
It's a living thing. If you're waiving the filing fees on these, and we still go ahead and file them as a courtesy more than anything, can that plat still be used as a reference to convey the property by? Even if will the commissioners be signing off on these plats that are filed in a voluntary,
Yes.
which is basically what we're talking about?
Yes.
So that still needs to be prepared, even though it's voluntary, we still need to prepare something for Commissioners Court to
Correct.
sign off on it.
Correct, because then that way, all the correct documents that all of you all can utilize will be over there at the clerk's office.
On those that's all that would need to be on there? We're not talking about having to any of the other
Sewer.
agencies or anything having to sign off on
Letter
it?
for water, letter for sewer.
Yeah, the same typical requirements, water, sewer, the
Not on.
utilities are.
Not on 10 acres.
But now we're still talking about the voluntary deal. If they're over 10 acres and they don't have to file a plat because of those,
Yeah.
Yes.
because you're exempt, and you're asking them to voluntarily file it, well, you wouldn't have gotten that information to begin with anyhow.
No,
So
sir.
why do you want to go above and beyond just getting the commissioner's court to sign off on it?
Yeah, that's all we want.
That's,
But, so we're not going to have all the other appendices,
No, sir.
No.
the certifications on it?
Everybody that gets, when they buy the lot, then they'll have to go get those
Okay.
out.
That's the way it
Yeah,
must be
we'll be
notified.
out of it.
So anything that wouldn't normally require plating, that if they want to voluntarily file it,
then.
it's just
it will
going to be
a
commissioner's
straight-
court that needs to sign off
Yes.
on it?
Yep.
Okay. And it can be used as a legal document to transfer the property back.
That'd be for somebody smarter than me
Yes.
to tell you that.
Well, I mean, the plat records.
Yes,
I mean,
it
that's
becomes
still
part of the
part
plat record.
official.
Just,
And that was part of it, to smooth out.
I understand.
All those
I'm
edges.
I'm all for that. I just want to make sure they can still legally convey property back.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
if I don't have to write any more field notes, I'm all for it.
Yeah,
I
you
still
tell us.
want mine.
That's a different phone call.
Okay. We have waded through it. What time is it?
It's 11:16.
Okay, Commissioner Vincent. Requested that the court review the number of spots per acre currently included in section 10 for RV tiny home park and consider increasing it from the limit set now as not to exceed 6 units per acre. This number is very restrictive for developers that specialize in RV parks. Our online search revealed that a good rule of thumb is no more than 10 RV spots per acre due to the requirements out of the incorporated areas for septic, water, bathhouses, washateria, et cetera. So is that something y'all want us to review?
Well, the current regs say 6.
Yes, sir.
So visiting with some of our RVers and going and looking at some of our RV parks. And plus I was approached by someone wanting to develop a pretty good size RV park. They just said that 6 spots per acre was hampered them.
Okay.
They could get by with 8, preferably they could get 10. So I'd like to see us increase them and the amount of spots per acre. Becky, TRA, y'all have anything that?
Just that we just need to make sure that how they design it, the septic and
Is
the
adequate.
water, depending on that situation. If it's central water, gives us a little bit more leeway than if it's a water well. Me personally, and the things that I've read through Title 30 and Chapter 290 on the water, the way I read it, I could be wrong, the way I read it is that it should be, an RV park is considered as a commercial, which we consider it in our permitting as commercial. And so I feel that water wells should be commercial as well, because we know that it's not just people coming in and staying a couple of days or a week or two and then going on. We have permanent people that are staying months at a time or years at a time. And, you know, that puts a different scenario even on our septic designs for water usage. That's gotta be designed in our water usage. I spoke with Jacob about that the other day. So,
Gary, do you have something to add to that?
Yes, ma'am. First of all, she's correct. Our water district used to consider all RV parks as full commercial. In 2016, in order to reduce red tape and stuff, we created a new permit called small business, because most of the RV parks were tiny. We didn't want to make them report water every quarter and how much water they were used, metered, and then pay a fee. So we moved them to a small business. Every 5 years they renew it, and it's only $100 for 5 years, and they don't pay any fees. But what I pointed out earlier was we're seeing the same thing. They're becoming more of what I would call a mobile home, and they're permanent. And from a you know, we manage access to the water and how much water and make sure it's not wasted. We don't manage the quality of that water. A lot of these RV parks are using, in some cases, they're old residential wells that used to have a homestead there, and they're putting in RV parks. And TCQ doesn't require an RV park that has less than 15 spaces to do any testing or quality on that water that they're pumping into those tanks and giving those, in some cases, permanent residents. And larger RV parks, like say Escape East, that's connected to a public water supply, that water's tested and filtered and cleaned, but these small ones are not, and it's unsafe, you know, in a lot of regard. These are shallow wells. You know, think the average water well in Polk County is less than 150 feet, whereas a commercial well for better, cleaner, safer water is usually around 300 feet in Polk County. And so this water is not filtered. They're just pumped into tanks and provided to these residents. In some cases, there may be older residents that health and safety is a little bit more concerning. Now, as a water district, we haven't considered moving them back to commercial yet, but we probably are going to eventually doing it because some of these are becoming large businesses.
So the person that approached me about this originally, the property that they're wanting to develop is right on the water. It goes from a farm to market road, but the biggest majority of it's going to be right on the water. And so, do you, Jacob, do y'all have
TRA.
Yeah, does TRA have any kind of guidelines on that? I mean, I know a lot of your RV parks overlook the water.
We go by the Chapter 285 rules that'll keep a sewer line 20 foot from the water, 75 foot for any dispersal field, and 50 foot for the tanks. So nothing specific for a RV site any different from a homestead.
Yeah, but wouldn't they be putting like a central sewer system in, a collection system, and then a treatment center on y'all's area like that? Say if I go out there and I want to develop one that's got 50 spots in it, and I want to treat my own sewer, then that had to be a design. I mean, we're not talking about we're not talking about a sewer system for each individual spot.
No.
Most time, because most time it's all treated, you know, everything's, all your lines run into one collection area and then go from there.
Right, your trunk line.
Yeah.
It can be that 20 foot from the lake and then all feed into a centralized location.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what I was getting at was, so the main thing that y'all require is just that they have adequate spray field for however many lots that they end up wanting to put in.
Right now, the state requires only 40 gallons per day per RV site, which is debatably too low in today's times, with the bigger campers being more, offering more washers and dryers, and people are spending the longer times in them and making homes out of them. So as a designer, you want to know kind of what is their real intent and design it for the long haul. You don't want to stick to state minimum standards any more than you just have to.
Right. Okay.
Right now, from our planning, we submit water forecast, right, for the county, how much water we need. RV parks are exempt right now because we don't have insight to how much water they need. And as they continue to grow and add permanent, they're using more water, which could draw down their neighbors' wells, right, and make them run dry. We don't plan for their water usage like we do a subdivision or a public water supply.
Well, I believe this one particular place may be on Alaska Water. I'm not for sure of that, but it's the sewage, you know, that I'm after. So I guess they're going to be somewhat limited to how many RV spots they can have based on the amount of land that they have.
Yes, sir.
For the needed
And the availability.
spray field.
For
Yeah.
the
And the availability of
Plus
water,
any other
sewage.
amenities that they
Right.
want to try to have, because they're talking about lazy rivers and all kind of stuff.
We're gonna have all kinds of lazy rivers around here. You're gonna have one, Bill's gonna have one.
If it keeps raining, we're all gonna be in one.
Well, that's a good point, though. You're saying no more than 10 per acre. Well, why are we putting a number on it? Because they're gonna take care of that.
Well,
Depending on your percolation of your ground, and a site survey prior to building that thing is gonna tell them how many gallons they can your system could treat, correct?
Right.
And what you could say, though, what you could say is no more than 10, right? But then, so that when they're first laying it out, and then you tell them, but it, depending on what everybody else, you know, what the criteria shows. Not to exceed.
From a designer standpoint.
Yeah.
Mr. Garrett?
Good to know. I mean, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
That's.
Okay.
10 acre with a bathhouse and washateria, would you still have enough room to do a spray field or an in-ground field?
That's-
Okay, so,
that's-
so can we do this? Can we ask Gary, TRA, Jacob, and Rebecca to basically sit down with us? We'll kind of go through and review some of these things and come up with a recommendation for the court.
May I ask a question first? How does the county define an RV park as an official business versus someone who just has some family and friends with mobile homes on their property? Is there a designation for what's a business and what's not?
At this time, not to my knowledge, unless permits has something like that. I do know that we did get into some issues similar to that because we did have people coming in and bringing multiple RVs, you know, and only had a permit for one water well and one septic line, which obviously made a mess. And so those are the kinds of things that we're trying to stay ahead of. So we'll have to start with what the description would be.
Our regulations only allow one water well to service up to two private
Okay.
residentials, unless it's a business.
Okay,
So
well then
somebody-
that'll be good
So
information.
if somebody
to
has a
have.
weekend home and they've got a lot next door to them and say they're on the river or something like that, and they have a lot next door to them, and they have a little clean out stub up there, how does the county or how does TRA look at it?
Nobody.
Where they back 3 or 4 RVs down there on a holiday weekend and they start
Nobody-
dumping into
nobody
their
cares.
residential field line? Or septic, I mean.
If I see that on a design, I wanna make sure it's added 40 extra gallons a day for that RV drop attached to that house.
Per RV drop?
Yes.
Just
And
forward.
which affects your spray size or your drain field.
Okay.
I just did one like that the other day off of Mangum Road, and that's what I added to it. And basically, it added more square footage for your spray area.
Okay, are we done with that? Are we done with the workshop? Okay, we'll start putting in writing now, Commissioner Overstreet. Okay, item number 5, new
Jay,
business.
you ready for us to put in a county RV park? No?
Okay, new business, your consent agenda, you have addendums on B. Addendum number 1 in the amount of $513.16. Addendum number 2 in the amount of $221,182.66. Also, Constable Hughes has requested that we delete item F, G, and H, which are all related. Thank you.
Thanks.
Which are all related to his asset forfeiture expenditures. Any questions or anything anyone wants to pull off of item 5?
So moved.
Need a motion to
Second.
approve, Commissioner Purvis, second Commissioner Vincent. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6, consider approval of personnel matters as follows. Review and consideration of personnel action form requests submitted since the last meeting and review of any authorized emergency hiring. We had one emergency hire, and that was at the Sheriff's Department. The listing was included in your packet.
Motion approved.
Motion to approve Commissioner Overstreet, second Commissioner Robertson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7, consider request for revisions and amendments to the budget as follows. A, FY 2021 budget revisions, number 2021-10, and amendments 2021-10A, as presented by the County Auditor's Office. A copy of the proposed revisions and amendments was included for your review.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Commissioner Overstreet.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Purvis. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8, consider request for capital purchases to be paid from general fund balance and included on the FY 2021 reimbursement resolution for year-end issuance of legally authorized debt as follows. Constable, Precinct 4, request for one Tough Book for in-car and one Motorola handheld radio not to exceed $7,475. The amount requested exceeds the approved capital purchase projection by $2,740. And the reason for that is that he is requesting now that he receive a dual band radio, meaning that it'll work with both the 700, 800 megahertz and the analog channels. I'll make the motion. Motion, Commissioner Robertson, second Commissioner Overstreet. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9, consider order authorizing the sale of fireworks during the Memorial Day period of May 26, 2021 through midnight, May 31st, 2021.
Let them go.
Commissioner Overstreet, second Commissioner Purvis. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 10, consider approval of agreement with Texas Association of Counties, TAC, for email migration. Our current platform, our Sierra platform, TAC is migrating the county email to a more secure and a more robust, which is the Microsoft 365 platform. And that will allow us to continue utilizing all their email services. However, what we do need to point out to everybody is that at this time, we pay $2 a month per email address. With the new TAC, with the new Microsoft 365, we will be paying $5.07 a month under the plan. So that's a huge, huge budget impact for us. Now, what that means is that we have got to do a better job of setting email addresses up generically, where they say, you know, office.manager instead of someone's name. We do need to go ahead and keep elected officials' names, just because you are the elected official, but staff names need to be getting filtered off. And I know you just got a new person, so did she have a co.polk ... address already? If she already did, then leave it
I can't answer
alone.
that. She came from the tax office over.
And so she may have already had her own. So we're not gonna
But we can
mess.
make sure we delete Miss Kathy's.
Yes. And see, that's the issue that has been created. So for example, if you take Kathy's and you delete it now, then you're gonna lose information that's in there. Unless you migrate everything over into the new email address. So by making them generic, by making it office.manager, then if the staff member comes and goes, then you still have all the information that was in that email. That make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
But isn't office.managers already taken?
Yeah.
When you have to change.
You say C clerk manager, I mean,
Office
Precinct
dot,
two.
dot,
Precinct
dot,
two.
dot, manager, and I'm the dot, 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 dot.
yeah.
Yeah, they're too long anyway.
So the whole thing is that we've got to get away from individual names
So
that
maybe,
for
maybe
staff.
we won't get near as many emails as y'all send us now then, huh?
Oh, you're not off the hook, Milt, not at all.
Yeah, jeez.
Call us.
So would that also change for departments?
What's that call us a couple
Right
cents?
now, we're not gonna change.
Conversation,
When
we're gonna
people
move on.
leave, then instead of giving the next person a name, we will make it a generic email address.
Okay.
So it's only when
So
people
it goes with
leave.
the office and not the person.
Correct.
'Cause I have one that's for office and then I have one that's for mine.
And that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. If you transfer or move around in the county, then we will change that email address.
Okay.
Because the problem is that then we end up paying for 2 or 3 sometimes. Okay, so the email platform also will double our storage capacity that is currently provided by Sierra and has more antivirus, spam protection, integration, et cetera. So we should be in better shape.
Yeah, I'll make the motion. I attended this.
Second.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, yes.
Commissioner Robertson, Commissioner Overstreet, any further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 11, consider approval of resolution to nominate Corgan OSB LLC for designation to the Office of the Governor, Economic Development and Tourism through the Economic Development Bank as an enterprise project. Corgan OSB has requested that the court consider the resolution, so it'll be forwarded to the governor to reinstate their status as an enterprise project. This time they're going for a double jumbo enterprise project, and they want the county to partner with them. The original status for their current facility was granted in 2015, March of 2015, and it has expired. So we would like to go ahead and move forward and grant
So
them.
moved.
Second.
Commissioner Purvis, second Commissioner Vincent. Any further discussion or question? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 12, consider approval of resolution in support of the US 59 relief route to the west of Corgan, Texas, from Texas Department of Transportation, TxDOT. So since it's a new designation, since they will be, it's for the relief route around Corgan, and then that will redesignate the current US 59 route to Business 59.
So moved if it'll rush them up in it.
Second.
Commissioner Purvis, Commissioner Overstreet. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 13, consider approval of 75% reimbursement to road and bridge precincts from general fund for nuisance abatements approved by the Commissioners Court that are not disaster related. This is what we talked about last time. Only if it's a nuisance abatement. Is this something that you all want us to consider?
75-25?
Mm-hmm.
Judge, both of the JPs had to leave for hearings, and they asked that I ask y'all, does this need to be stated in their findings? Or
What?
does this need to be in their findings?
Does
Whatever
what
we-
need to be in their
Whatever we
findings?
decide.
Yeah.
She circled,
For the abatement
not
stuff?
disaster related, and then said, does this need to be on findings?
Oh, I don't know. We'll get with them afterwards.
Okay.
That'll work.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it will be.
This one's up
Their
to you.
findings will just determine whether or not they're gonna put a lien on the house or not. You know, or how they're gonna proceed. So no, I don't think that will affect their findings.
Okay.
I think that becomes the issue of Linebarger or whoever's collecting property taxes at that point in time. Okay, is that something that you all would like to consider, is receiving at least a partial reimbursement for monies expended for nuisance abatements?
Well, Judge,
Non-storm related. Or disaster related.
Non-storm related, nuisance abatements. Old buildings that you have tried to get them to clean up that are a health and safety issue.
So, storm related, what are we gonna do?
Storm related, we keep doing what we're doing, which is that we go through TDM and CDBG and all of that.
And then what if they don't get it all?
Okay,
What
right
is the
now we have
fault
to,
of-
right now we have to deal with this, because that's what's on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
so we can't talk about storm related?
No, sir, because right now, the agenda says nuisance abatements.
Can we?
Now, we can come back and talk about storm related in another agenda if you would like to.
Can we table, can we delete this and put storm and this all in one and get all this hashed out? Like we tried, like y'all, looks like y'all leaning towards?
Well, I don't know.
Ooh, no, sir.
I did, I don't know.
No, sir. I don't think the budget can take that. We end up with a $8 million storm. We'll wipe out everything completely. I'm willing to
Judge,
do
I
the,
think where Tommy might be going and where I'm going is that to make the decision on the 75-25 for me, and Mill, because we were just impacted by a storm, it's gonna be a matter of what my budget could stand.
well, and that's gonna happen no matter what. That's gonna happen no matter what. One year you may have a nuisance abatement that is insignificant, right? But then the next year you may have one that is significant, and you may not, or if you have two significants, you're not gonna necessarily do them all at the same time. Those are management decisions. I'm just asking you, do you want me to refund you some of your money immediately? Because Linebarger has already told us, right in that meeting, that even if that property gets condemned, even if they put a lien on it, right, that it's gonna be 2 to 3, maybe 4 years before you see a single dime.
So the 25% that we would be paying for, it would be 2 to 3 or 4 years before we would see the
No, you're
recouping of
paying-
that 25%.
And you'd never recover it, because that was the other thing that he said. He said, you're never gonna recover the full amount, more than likely.
So any money that they did recover would go to the general fund?
Mm-hmm.
And then
Unless-
75% would come to road and bridge.
Huh?
I said the 75% that would be rebated, is that what I?
Well, I think what it's meant is that 75% would be paid for out of the general fund.
Yeah.
And then 25% would come out of our road and bridge budget.
Correct. When you do the abatement.
Now, this is just for general abatements.
Yes, just for general
You just want
abatements.
to tear a building down. Ain't got nothing to do with no storms or nothing.
No, nothing, just a general abatement.
Well,
If you don't want to do it, it makes no difference to me. General fund will keep its money. But the point was to try to get you your money as quickly as possible so that your budget would not be impacted. And furthermore, after discussing it with Linebarger and them telling us that more than likely, you're not going to get back the full amount that you had to spend on the abatement to begin with.
what if we did general fund 100%?
Then we'll do general fund 0, offers off the table.
Well, it's commissioner's court, Judge, not judges.
Hey, I understand that.
Court has to decide as a whole.
Has there been a kind of a ballpark figure of how much this would be in the years past at any of y'all's?
We ain't
No,
never
we've just
been-
not really gotten going.
So you-
I do have one coming up here, though, the quote that we got on it was, to tear it down was $24,500. So my budget would take a little over $6,000 hit to get it tore down.
But we'd get 75% back, reimbursement, I guess.
Yes.
Well, the general fund would pay the $18,375 and whatever money was recouped, which I think the judge is right. It's gonna be a vacant lot, and they're not gonna get that kind of money for the vacant lot. So but whatever money was recouped would go to satisfy the lien, I'm assuming, which would come back to the general fund.
And most of the time, those things end up like in the sheriff's sale, and we all know what happens in the sheriff's sale. You know, everybody gets excited if you get 35% of the value in the sheriff's sale, right?
And about 25%.
Yes.
So.
Don't matter, I ain't got nothing. I've been trying for years to get one done, and I ain't never got one, so this is all up to you. Don't affect me none.
It probably will, though.
Eventually it will.
Eventually.
What happened to the disaster funds?
Ma'am?
Ma'am,
Disaster from the nuisance. Did you get disaster funds?
what's that?
Can you get disaster funds?
You got
She's asked about
disaster
disaster
funds from-
funds.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Thank
We
you.
apply for all disaster funds.
Yeah.
We apply for all disaster funds through DEDCOG, through the tech state, through anyone we qualify for. Okay. I'll make a motion to delete if you all are not interested in that one. And we can move on to number 14.
Can we table it till the next meeting?
Yes,
Motion to
ma'am?
table?
I mean, this will be our
Let me do
second
it.
table.
Okay.
Okay, motion to table, Commissioner
And Judge, when
Robertson?
we do the next one, could we also include the storm? But maybe on a different agenda item?
I can't say anything about the storm until we really crunch the numbers to see what impacts would be. Right now, I'm trying to take care of the nuisance abatement, which is totally separate and distinct from any storm. Are we talking about specifically the tornado? Or
Well,
every storm?
Well, I guess it would be every storm.
Exactly.
It could be every storm, but what I'm saying is that, I'm not talking about road and bridge, building of roads or anything like that. I'm talking about, buildings, houses, what have you, that people have just walked away from.
And those are gonna move into your nuisance abatement. Those move into becoming nuisance abatement.
So are those included in what you've got here for this
Yes, ma'am, yes, sir.
75-25?
Yes, sir.
So it does include the storm, which is what you asked?
It cannot include storm damage. It is a nuisance abatement. So a nuisance abatement can be a long-term nuisance abatement, like Mills, right? Or it can be a short-term nuisance abatement where a structure
like
just
the
needs to be
ones that-
taken down.
So like the ones that I'm working on right now, they would be in this or considered
Yes, sir.
storm?
Yes, sir.
Even though the reason why they're like they are is because of the storm?
Yes, sir, because now they have become nuisance abatements.
Okay. And I think that might have been what, so it is the same?
Well, you're looking at that, but the time is what you're talking about. It can take you 4 years for it to go through the process to get one to where you can tear it down or remove it through
Yeah,
the
the one
nuisance
that we're
abatement.
moving on now that we think we might can get a hold of the quickest, I think Lumbarger was saying it might be December or January before.
But
And here's the deal
nevertheless,
with that, and here, so let's say it went to a tax sale, and the building's still in the shape that it's in. Because it is in the shape that it is, it's not gonna bring near as much money as what it normally would, so we're gonna get even less money back.
You know going into these abatements, this right here, you're gonna get beat up.
no, that's correct.
You're gonna get beat up. You're not gonna recoup your money. Very few of them, you know, what's the lien on
No, the
something?
25% is pretty much gonna be just gone.
Mhm.
So we would have the choice of either doing the abatements and helping clean the community and losing the 25%, or doing nothing, so to speak,
Correct.
is what it comes to. And I mean, I can't just sit around and do nothing. You know, I work for the people, and so we gotta keep that moving.
Well, and that's why I think this would work out for you. Even though in some cases, there may not even be relief on the taking down of the building that is immediate. Right? But at least your money would roll back into your coffers for you to keep going.
Well, we wouldn't get any money back.
You'd get 75% back in. You'd be out 25% instead of 100%. An abatement is an abatement regardless of how it happened or where it came from or how long it's been there.
I don't expect most of them will be this much. Most of the two that we've done so far are in that $3,000 to $4,000
Yeah.
range. So. And if we do it ourselves, then we just do it
Do
ourselves.
whatever you want to do, yeah. I mean, your budgets are your own, so if you decide to proceed on your
So
own.
I can't send the general fund a bill?
Huh?
I can't send the general fund a bill?
No.
It's only on, that's what I was gonna ask, this is only on contract work.
No,
Hiring a contractor to go in there and do it,
no,
reimburse it.
no.
But if he keeps up his time, equipment and all that and
Exactly.
everything, he gets reimbursed
Yeah, I think
75%?
that's-
Okay,
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
yeah. Okay,
That's
I got you,
it.
yeah.
I'll go for that.
Right
The
there.
majority of them we can
That's
do
why I don't get it.
Majority of
We're
them we try to do
discussing
ourselves.
this.
Huh?
The majority of them we try to do ourselves.
Yeah.
Would you
She
have
gonna
to
be
tear
a-
down the old building on the farm?
Ma'am?
Would you have to tear down the old building that's on the farm?
No, ma'am, we're trying to tear down buildings that are health and safety issues.
They-
Okay.
Yes,
go-
ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll withdraw my table and I'll make a motion that we go with the 75%.
Okay. Do I have a second?
reluctantly second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, item number 14, discuss and consider approval of modified permit fee schedule for solar farms. Okay, you received a copy from the permits department where Rebecca did some researching. And so this is in a nutshell, basically. The fee schedule that was adopted by the court on July 23rd, 2019 did not specifically address solar farms. And so they currently only qualify for a commercial development permit, which is really only intended for buildings. And those are set at $250 for the first 1,500 feet and $100 for every additional 1,000 square feet. So a solar farm, since it's measured in acres, would have a pretty pricey permit fee, to say the least. So we pulled several counties that have solar farms, and if you will look at some of those, they are actually rather steep, pricey as well. So you have Tom Green County, and Tom Green County forces them to go through their tax abatement process. So they can't just go do it. They have to go through the whole full tax abatement process. And you see the $1,000 application fee, payment in lieu of taxes, 48%, etc. Orange County is $300 initial fee, and then it's an additional 50 cents for each additional $1,000 value. Well, most of these solar farms are up in the 200 millions. So that 50 cents doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it ends up being a lot. And then Travis County, $55 plus $1.35 per 100,000 of construction cost, and then an engineered cost estimate is required. So the recommendation that Rebecca is bringing is that for projects of 100 acres or less, we do $500 fee, and then each additional 20 acres or portion thereof be $100.
So how big is that one that you have out towards you, Tommy?
We're talking about 1,800 to 2,000 acres.
And we have some that are starting smaller, but they have room for growth.
But what I'm wondering on the acreage right here, is I visited with that guy the other day about this, and the streamside management zones and all that, is that going to be included in this 20 acres, or only where the footprint of it is?
Only the footprint.
Because like I say, where they're at, there's a few creeks and whatnot that they're not going to be able to utilize, and that's what I was wondering.
Right.
That land.
And I would say the footprint, and of course, we still have to deal with the floodplain if
Yeah.
it's in an area that has floodplain, so that has to be.
Yeah, it's not. Say
And
that.
my suggestion was also for any office buildings that they have out there, that they go through our normal
Yeah.
commercial
Yeah, the
stuff
buildings would
for the
just be
office
commercial.
building and the septic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I say, they say 2,000 acres, and it might only encompass 1,500 with the streamside management zones and all that kind of stuff.
No,
That's
it
reasonable.
it would be just the footprint.
Okay, just
I
where.
think just I mean,
Yeah.
however y'all wanna do it is
Yeah.
fine with me, let me know.
I mean, they're already getting a pretty good abatement most of the time.
Yes, sir. Most of the time,
That's what I'm saying.
most of them are coming in and receiving an abatement to begin with anyway. So this would just cement the permit fees and level them out so that it's not so exorbitant.
Give us a little more money.
So basically, the one that Tommy had would be, you said $500 for
First 100.
the first 100,
And 500 for every other.
and then 100 for,
Well, it's still 500 for every other after that. Because you've got 20, right?
Yeah.
100 for
Yeah.
each 20 acre after that.
Right. So,
so like the one Tommy has, what would that have cost?
$7,500.
mhm.
Well, that's a lot better than what they would have had to pay.
Oh, yeah.
Cause even on one that was, I know we had one that came through that was about 53 acres. Our square footage wise, it was gonna be, with the 911 and all that goes with it, almost $150,000.
I just think that this gets it more reasonable.
Yeah. Okay,
Y'all okay with that?
so move.
Motion to approve, Commissioner Vincent?
Question. So we're gonna treat the ones not asking for tax abatement the same as we are the tax abatements?
Yes, sir, the permit's gonna be the permit. The permit's just the permit, regardless of how they choose to proceed management-wise after that.
Okay.
I need a second.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Overstreet. Any further discussion or question? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Okay, huh? Yes, ma'am. You know what? Let me, can we skip?
Yeah.
Can we skip to 17, 18, and 19 and let some of these people go eat lunch?
Yep.
Since it appears my kindergarten stomach is not gonna get fed.
They probably wish we'd have skipped to them a while ago.
Yeah. Okay, 17, consider request for approval of discretionary exemption to exempt from county subdivision regulations the development of abstract 396 M. Lindsay Survey, 10.6 acres, located in precinct 4 and consisting of 3 tracts with individual access to existing public roads with no other common areas and/or street. So the copy was included in there with a request from Commissioner Overstreet. Comes as a motion from Commissioner Overstreet. Second, Commissioner Purvis. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 18, consider request for approval of variance to exempt topographic map as required by Polk County subdivision regulations for DeShazo Estates subdivision in precinct 3. Commissioner,
moved.
it comes as a request from Commissioner Purvis and a motion.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Vincent. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 19, old business, table from the last meeting, consider approval of the Sewage Estates subdivision located in precinct 3, which backs up to
Yes, we will approve it.
Second.
Commissioner Purvis, Commissioner Overstreet. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay.
We apologize for all the trouble.
It's a learning curve for all of us.
I learned more than I wanted to know.
The basis of the plan is a good plan. This is something interesting.
Thank you all.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Thank
you.
y'all.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 16. Discuss and consider renewal options for school land surface leases in Throckmorton and Baylor County. On March 23rd, the court made the decision to increase the surface lease agreement expiring June 20th for the Polk County school lands by $3 an acre if with a 5-year lease and with a 5-year renewal option, or $5 an acre with a 10-year lease and 10-year renewal. Evidently, the landholders, the lessees, cannot agree which one they want. So the court is going to have to decide, do you want to go, say, 5 acres, $5 an increase per acre for 10 years? Then that gives them 20 years, basically, of utilizing the land at the 5 acres, or 5 years at $3 an acre.
Why not, they were happy with 5 years previously.
Mr. Cooper, actually, there were a couple of the larger landowners that wanted it to be extended to a 10-year so that they could invest more in the land without feeling like it would be yanked from them.
But they don't want to pay for it.
No, sir, they do not want to pay for it.
Mr. Cooper, you're, I see you're here. You're here for this, I guess. You got any?
I was here to listen about the roads and subdivision.
Oh,
And actually,
Okay.
it's a good thing that Mr. Cooper is here, because his school district is one of the school districts that benefits from this.
Well, that's the reason I thought he was
So
here for that.
these are our kids.
I didn't know he's planning on putting a subdivision up there in my part of the world.
I just want to know if my buses can get down.
We sure hope so.
We're working on it.
5 years after they're built.
So basically, I think the court just is going to have to decide how you're going to proceed, and go ahead and notify the landowners. We've gotten, we received one letter from actually a superintendent in the area, talking about how much money our kids are going to be receiving. Well, his kids are receiving that same money as
Yeah,
well.
that's pretty unprofessional,
Yes.
Yeah.
what he done.
Yeah, so anyway, so I just think the court needs to decide. You wanna go with a 5-year renewal option and keep doing what we've been doing at $3 an acre more, or $10 and increase the lease, and then we don't have to mess with it
I'll
as
make the
often.
motion that we go with a 5-year and $3 an acre for the, what we've been doing, but
But
plus
just
the
with an
three.
increase.
Yes.
Second.
You second that? Okay. Commissioner Robertson, Commissioner Vincent. So we're gonna go with a 5-year renewal at $3 an acre, with an optional 5-year after that. Any further discussion or questions?
That's the $3 for hunting.
Yes. Any other questions? All in favor,
Wish
say
I'd have got
aye.
that deal yesterday when I got mine in. For 5 years.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the last information I have on here is about the American Rescue Plan Act. And actually, when I first saw it and they told me I was invited to an ARP meeting, I was like, really? I'm not quite there. I'm not an ARP yet. Not that I'm not sliding that direction. Okay, so at this time, the exact amount is unknown. We tried to get on the website yesterday. Several departments tried to get on there yesterday to listen in on some of the information from the federal government, and all of them were already packed, so they were unable to get the information out to all of the entities that needed to receive the information. So at this time, the total amount that we are going to receive is at some point between 9 and 10 million from the American Rescue Plan Act. Now, we have until December 2024 to utilize the funds, or they will be returned to the U.S. Treasury. They come with strings attached, obviously. It's federal monies. So they cannot be used for revenue replacement for government services. They can be used, for revenue replacement for provision of government services. They can be used for COVID-19 expenditures or negative economic impact of COVID-19, including assistance to small business, household, industries, and economic recovery. It can be used for investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, and to pay for essential workers. The money cannot be placed into a pension fund, and it cannot be used to offset tax reductions or delay a tax or a tax increase. So they're not recurring, so they very specifically tell you not to use them for new programs or add-on. You cannot,
Recurring.
right, yeah, because you're not gonna get them anymore. So you can cover operating deficits that were caused by COVID-19, but they need to be temporary. Things that, where we had deficits or we had issues that were temporary, then we can utilize those monies there.
The question on that, premium pay for essential workers,
Mhm.
What does that mean?
what does that mean?
That means you can give them more money.
Who more money? Essential
Whatever
workers.
the federal government designates as being essential workers. And in our case, it would be emergency management and the sheriff's office. Now, it cannot be something that would be a long-term, you could give them a bonus or you could do something like that. It could not be folded into payroll, because then payroll
I
becomes a
understand that,
recurring.
but like the people that never missed a beat, other than emergency management and the sheriff's department.
Well, we will ask for clarification on that.
Yeah, I would
but
like that.
Up to date, those have been the ones that they considered.
Because there's
Yeah, but hell, our guys never missed a
Our
day of
guys
work.
Yeah, I was
showed
gonna
up
say.
every day.
Hey, my gals
yeah,
showed up every day.
I understand.
Well,
So I think the ones that we never got to,
so their definition of essential might not be the same as ours.
that's right.
Well,
Y'all
And
were
we will
essential
ask
and
them-
we were essential.
we will ask them for clarification and see, I'm just giving you what we have right
Yeah,
now.
I understand, but
Because
that's
we
the reason I
don't
asked
know.
that. I seen that
But
yesterday.
the other one we need clarification is investment in critical infrastructure.
Roads
That's the one that's caught
They
my
have,
eye.
they have already told us
That's roads.
that
Critical infrastructure is roads.
the ones they're mostly focused on is broadband.
I seen, I figured that.
Okay,
Well-
can I ask you a question?
The major focus is on broadband.
That's way over here. This is in a whole different, this is in this other
What
deal
about,
over here.
what about a structure
Yeah.
Probably.
like the courthouse?
And that's why, no, we can't use it for the courthouse because it was already in the plan. It has to be something that was affected or impacted.
Use it for the courthouse and then take the money we had allocated for the courthouse and let Road and Bridge have it.
There you go.
I think that's called fraud. But the DA's not in here, so.
The auditor did
Okay,
it.
so what I need is for all of you all to read through here. We will send you the information whenever we get more information of what the possibilities are, how the money can be utilized, et cetera. But we want everybody to look this over very carefully so we can come up with some good projects that would be good long-term projects, not short fix, but good long-term projects.
I got all you need.
Good, start making a list.
Hey, Judge, I wasn't trying to cut your people out. I was just going to bat for them a while ago.
Yeah.
Well, and we do, okay, so in all honesty, you're good. You're good. So in all honesty, we did have some departments that never closed the doors. Maintenance never got to go home or close the doors.
A
So,
bunch of them.
yes, so we did have a lot of people that, I think Courtney has, right now, over 400 comp hours. She'll never get all those comp hours back. Unless we tell her to go on vacation for 3 months. And we can't afford her to go on vacation for 3 months.
Well, pay her.
Well, it may come to that.
I mean,
So, anyway, that's mostly an information item. We need for you all to really start looking at that. The next time we receive information on trainings, if the federal government has enough slots for everybody that they invite to attend, then we'll make sure we include you also at either you or your office managers can watch.
So this money will come down about 2023 actually, and everybody be in a rush to get rid of it.
No, sir, we're supposed to
Half
receive
of
the
it-
first monies in May.
In May?
There's our treasurer right back there.
Just get half of it from what I understand.
Half of it in May and then half of it a year from the date
Yes,
that you get the first.
correct.
But we haven't received it yet.
And we have done all the preparations. Our auditor, our treasurer, budget, everybody has made all the preparations. We're good to go. Now we're just waiting on it. And I understand your skepticism. It's the federal government. I believe it when I see it.
Yeah, that's a mid deal.
Is it
And
coming
they're gonna
straight to
rush
us
you,
or through the
and they'll
state?
rush you to spend it once they hand it to you.
Okay, and that's why we are pushing for everybody to review it and to look at this information now.
And it's not gonna go to the state at all,
Uh-uh.
right?
Straight down to us.
Straight down to
Yep.
us?
Yep,
All right.
so we don't have to fight Austin for it.
straight to the road, man.
Straight to the road.
$9 million will be a little over $2 million a piece.
Yeah.
Straight to
Appreciate
broadband so your guys can keep up with it on their phones out in the rural areas. Do you have any
Okay.
further business?
No, it's your
Motion
turn.
to adjourn.
Second. I've been wondering when you was gonna do that.
Wait, waiting on her to tell us.
Thank y'all.
Figure this out.
Thank y'all for
Thank
coming.
you, everybody.
Thank you,
That's the
Yes, sir.
longest meeting we've ever had.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jacob.
9 minutes after 12.
Mr. Hudson, thank y'all.
What you doing, Jay? I tried to call you the other day.
Did you? Thank you.
Them people at the nutrition, not the nutrition center, but the
Did we all sign?
Road and bridge.
everybody got against
Road and bridge.
Everything.
One of the, myself, I'm a developer on the solar